This video will review the vocabulary tips from this newsletter. There's 3 important questions that you need to think about. The first question, how can I improve my TOEFL IBT vocabulary skills? Question 2, how do I develop strong vocabulary skills for the TOEFL IBT without using a dictionary? Question 3, how do I remember the TOEFL IBT vocabulary words I'm memorizing? Let's take a look at the first question. How can I improve my TOEFL IBT vocabulary skills? You have to read, and read a lot. College level texts, you can read things in natural sciences, social sciences, humanities, business. It's important to spend about 45 minutes a day reading these texts. Don't answer the phone, don't text anybody, don't email, don't answer the door. Focus on the reading. Question 2. How do I develop strong vocabulary skills for TOEFL IBT without using a dictionary? This is important. When you're taking the TOEFL test, you will not be able to use a dictionary. And let's face it, when you start taking university classes at American universities or universities in England, Australia, New Zealand, and so on, you may have to read a 700-page book for each of your classes. What if you're taking 3 or 4 classes? That's almost 3,000 pages that you have to read during that term. You will not have enough time to get your dictionary out every time you don't understand a word. It simply won't work. Try to understand the new word by looking at the context in which it is used. Examples. Take a look at the following sentence here. You got, John is gregarious. For example, he enjoys being around people. Now, this is the word that you might not understand, gregarious. Now, right after that sentence, you see, for example, it says he enjoys being around people. So maybe you see the word being around people, you connect that to the previous sentence because you're assuming that the sentence which comes after the sentence that you're trying to study is connected. So gregarious is being around people. So are you surprised that gregarious means social? A person who is social? Appositives. This is another way to understand vocabulary without using a dictionary. Now, sometimes when you're looking at a sentence, you can identify mitosis is the subject, and then you have the verb, which is. Notice this idea here, a type of cell division. This is actually not the subject, but what does it refer to? A type of cell division refers to mitosis, and this is called an appositive. An appositive is a noun phrase which is used to modify another noun phrase. So are you surprised that mitosis is a type of cell division? Sometimes punctuation can help you understand vocabulary words you're not familiar with. So let's take a look at the following sentence. Let's read it first. It says, a muscle contraction, you notice the dash, the process of shortening the length of the muscle allows the body to perform the necessary action. So for you, you need to pay attention to that punctuation mark and also this one. These are called dashes. Now the word that you're trying to understand here is contraction. So a muscle contraction, and it says the process of shortening. So are you surprised that contraction has to do with shortening something, in this case a muscle? There you go, punctuation. The conjunction or. Pay attention to this word. This word is important. Bankruptcy, or the legal declaration of one's ability to pay one's debts, increases in direct proportion to a country's economic decline. Now the question here, the bankruptcy is your subject here, and your verb is increases. But what we're trying to do is understand what this word means. Maybe you already know, but just follow with me anyway. So you got bankruptcy, then it says or. When you see the word or in a reading passage, it means it will explain what came before that. So then you read the legal declaration of one's ability to pay one's debt. So you're probably not surprised that bankruptcy means you don't have enough money to pay your debts, and legally you make that declaration so you can be protected from your creditors. That's bankruptcy. Alright, let's take a look at clauses and use this to understand vocabulary. Okay, let's take a look at the following sentence. A run-on sentence, which is a combination of two independent clauses with no punctuation, is a common error among writers. Now, what we're talking about here is when you're reading, pay attention to these kinds of words: which, that, where, those kinds of words. We know that which is an adjective clause connector, and that it goes back to the subject. The subject here is a run-on sentence, and of course the verb of the main part of the sentence is. So we know that the adjective clause is describing a run-on sentence, therefore it's logical to assume that a run-on is a combination of two independent clauses with no punctuation. We also know that a run-on sentence is a common error among writers. Reference. Reference can also be used to understand vocabulary words you're not sure about. Let's take a look at this sentence. It says here, most countries experience a contraction of their gross national product during recession periods. This economic problem solves itself as the economy recovers. My point is, the word this economic problem, because of the word this, it didn't say a problem. It said this problem, even the, which means it connects back to the previous idea. So the word or group of words you may not be sure about is a contraction of their gross national product is a type of economic problem based on this referent here. So even though you might not know exactly what contraction is, you do know it's a type of economic problem, and for reading purposes that's good enough. A common mistake among many readers, they think they need to know everything about the words that they see in the reading passages. You just need to get the gist or the general idea of what you think the word means and then keep reading. Alright, let's take a look at the be verb. Here's your sentence. A tight-lipped person is one who can be trusted to keep secrets. My point is, when you see this word, whatever comes before, whatever comes after, this idea is describing the subject. English grammar uses, after linking verbs, they're called subject complements. It's a word or group of words which give information back to the subject. So a tight-lipped person is one who can be trusted to keep secrets. It means if you tell the person something, they're not going to tell it to anybody else. You can trust that person. So my point is, use this word and look at what comes after and see how that helps you understand what comes before. Are you kind of getting the idea here that a bad reading strategy is to stop reading when you see a word that you don't know? Do you see why I'm encouraging you to read regularly, to read extensively, to not stop when you see words you don't know, to not use dictionaries, to rely on the context for understanding of these things? How about contrast? Sometimes you'll have a word which it might be on the other hand, it might be in contrast, it might be but, might be although, might be nonetheless, but these words introduce information which is the opposite of what came before. So it's kind of like you have a word and then you maybe have an antonym or antonym explanation of that word. Now what's the opposite of hot? Cold, right? What's the opposite of big? How about small, right? You got it? Now, let's take a look at this. Let's think about opposites. So, although Mark is in hot water because of what happened, now, we already know that this is a contrast because of that word although. We know that his friend Tom will suffer no untoward consequences. So, what's the opposite of having no consequences or having no trouble? Of course, the opposite of that, of having no consequences, is having consequences. So hot water has to do with having trouble. That's kind of what that means. So if you see the idiom, maybe in a TOEFL listening passage, it'll say something like, he's in hot water, she's in hot water. You can probably guess that that means trouble. But my point is you're paying attention to what comes after this particular idea here. Okay, let's take a look at another vocabulary strategy. It's called other words in the sentence. Tornadoes are a type of low-pressure center characterized as rotating masses of air at high velocities. These weather disturbances can, through a series of sucking, sweeping motion, destroy anything that lies in their paths. Maybe I should use an S here. It goes back to tornadoes. Or I get rid of this. Okay. Now my question is tornadoes. Now maybe you know what tornadoes are, but if you heard this in a listening or reading passage, you would be asked, what are some characteristics of tornadoes perhaps? Now we know from the sentence, other words which help us is tornadoes are low pressure center. We know that tornadoes have rotating masses of air at high velocities. We know that tornadoes, using the referent these, we know that they're also weather disturbances. We also know that tornadoes have sucking, sweeping motions. And we also know from the verb that tornadoes destroy. So by using all of these words in these two sentences, it helps us understand what that word means. And our final question to review what you learned in the newsletter. How do I remember the TOEFL IBT vocabulary words I'm memorizing? Obviously, if you begin studying words and immediately after that you're forgetting those words, something is not right. So my suggestions are pretty basic. Create a system of studying vocabulary using note cards. I also pointed out it's important to use the word in a conversation or formal presentation. Another important point is hear and understand the word in listening contexts, such as radio, television, or TOEFL IBT audio materials. This is pretty important. Think about it. Radio, television, TOEFL IBT audio materials. All of these things are important listening exercises for you to do regularly here. Regularly. Remember, you can't build Rome in a day. A third way to help you really learn vocabulary words, use the verb in a writing assignment. This is pretty important. Number 4, read and understand the word in an authentic reading passage. It might be a newspaper, it might be a magazine, it might be a textbook, even a novel. Very important. And the last suggestion that you can do is use the word in any of these 1 through 4 contexts again. Now to conclude, you're probably getting the feeling that learning vocabulary and preparing for a TOEFL is hard work. It is. All the students I talk to when I interview them, all of them who have high TOEFL scores, none of them tell me, Michael, it's easy. They tell me that they need to read a lot, they need to speak a lot of English. They tell me that it takes several months of practice before they feel confident enough to take the test. So it is. If you work hard and you're focused, you follow some of these suggestions, I promise you, you will improve in your vocabulary. And let's face it, vocabulary is one of the keys to doing very well on the TOEFL IBT.